Hello and welcome again to Smart. We are now at the final end of the five-step process, and we're going to be covering tips and tricks amongst other things. My name is Peter Mastriani. I'm the founder and the director of the Buyer's Guide, and we have created the Smart process in order for you to become buyer ready within a 5-week period time frame. Look, I guess for you to acquire your home, to realise your dreams and to really defend your financial future. That's what the SMART process is really all about. So tips and tricks. So today we're going to couple off a cover of pointers just to really give you some additional considerations that you could make. A lot of people think that to buy their first home, they have to live in it, but they don't realise the other potential considerations that they could possibly do or undertake to allow them to move ahead financially quicker or be more financially savvy perhaps, or even to get into the property a little earlier. So let's have a look at what those potential things could be. So the first tip that we're going to discuss is buying an investment property instead. Look, who said that you really need to live in your home before you actually purchase an investment property? Rules, there are no rules. And, you could really consider renting that bad boy out. You can claim the deductions and, capitalise on potential growth over the property in the long term. A clever purchase, a little patience could certainly reap some really large rewards. I've managed to do this myself several times now. It's a personal favourite of mine, and it's probably largely been the reason why I was able to purchase property at such an early age. I benefited from the tax deductions, and the weekly rent check that I did receive was the boost that I really needed in order to make this transaction actually work. Look, it can certainly be a financially rewarding and sound option, but it's not going to be suitable for everyone. And look, I would strongly recommend for professional advice to be sought prior to exercising this option, particularly from a solicitor and a good conveyancer, as well as a very good accountant to ascertain where you're going to stand from a taxation perspective. Now, one thing to be mindful of is that in order to receive the first home buyer's grant, you will actually have to live in the property. And typically that period of time is for a minimum of 12 months. Now, you could sacrifice that grant, I suppose, and rent the property out straight away after you actually purchase. That's another thing to be considered. But look, you'll have to really sit down and crunch the numbers, and that's best to go through with your accountant and really factor in what the best or the worst case costing scenario could be. So to give you an overview of what some of the rough numbers could look like, say you had a base income of $65,000. The purchase price was perhaps $550,000. You're borrowing 80% of the purchase price. Your weekly gross income would be around about $1,250. The rent per week would, let's say, be $400. So realistically, you're bringing in around about $1,650, or $1,380 after tax. So repayments on $520K, which would be the loan principal amount, over 25 years at an interest rate of 5.75%, would probably equate to around about $754 a week. So to make the math and make it nice and easy, let's just say $1,350 minus $750. What's that give? That gives around about $600 a week left over at that point in time. So there's going to obviously be additional expenses that you need to account for. Insurance, rates, water, maintenance for the property. There could be periods of time when the property will sit vacant. There would also be property management costs if you choose to go down that route. But, realistically though, all things considered, do you think that you would be able to make ends meet with $600 a week left over? Look, I was certainly able to, and you need to then take into consideration the advantages from a tax perspective. Owning the property as a rental will allow for a number of income reductions. The interest on the loan will be classified as an expense, and also there will be a depreciation entitlement as well. It's get a quantity surveyor out and get them to create a bill of rates that determine what a depreciation schedule could look like. And that'll particularly be helpful for your accountant at tax time as well. Now, those schedules will cost around about $1,000 or so, and it's, I guess, the deductions from a taxation perspective that could really make a strategy like this beneficial for you, particularly as a first home buyer. Careful consideration, though, does really need to be made against rental yields, the demand for the property where it's located as well, if it's actually suitable for the target market that you're actually trying to attract into the rental as well. So maybe after a little bit of time, you could even perhaps use the equity in the property to buy another one. Start building a portfolio, and before you know it, you'll be a tycoon. Some aspects to definitely consider, though, is definitely capital growth, the demand for rentals within the area, maintenance requirements of the property, the depreciation, the rates of return that you could receive, the income tax implications as well, interest rates, and also additional expenses. To really get a handle on what the demand could be for the property in the area that you choose, or what the capital growth implications could be, I would refer back to the Australian Bureau of Statistics to check out previous census data as well, just to get a handle on what the split and the demographic makeup of that region is. It should give you a better indication of the growth yields and rental demand for that potential property in your chosen area. And look, it's very similar to purchasing a home that you were going to live in. You need to consider all the aspects like transport, like schooling, the proximity to the amenities where your property is located. What's the walk score of the property? And above all else, you really need to seek good professional advice. You need to do good background checks on any potential applicant or tenant who is going to come into the property, because you want to ensure that they are going to treat your home as if it was their own as well. Some investment property tips. Now, I believe there isn't actually a lot of difference between buying an investment and buying a property that is going to be your principal place of residence. The fundamentals are exactly the same. First of all, though, you should seek professional advice wherever possible. I think if you're going to buy an investment property, you should also consider borrowing enough to actually cover the purchase price and the on-costs. The reason that I would say that is because there's some benefits that you can receive from a tax perspective on deductions that you can make. I would always strongly suggest to look at positive and negative gearing options. There's pros and cons of going down each of those avenues. But it really will depend on the type of strategy or investment strategy that you are looking to create. And again, it's worthwhile working with your accountant to devise what's going to be suitable for you. Look, I would obviously choose a suitable loan, choose a loan that is going to be competitive from an interest rate perspective, but also gives you the flexibility that, if your circumstances change, the product can change with you as well. I would also look at weighing up principal and interest-only loans as well. Again, to maximise your deductions, you potentially want to look at the property and just maintain interest-only payments. But again, it could depend completely on your strategy, and it may be more beneficial to use more of a P&I type arrangement. And most importantly, I think when it comes to investment property, you really need to take a long-term approach. Look, it's particularly important because property values will only truly appreciate over time, and it needs to be a long-term game. Now, the cost of owning an investment property can be surprisingly low after you take into account your rental income and the tax deductions that you're going to be entitled to. So I would suggest to choose the right property at the right price. really do your sums. Cash flow is always going to be king. You need to find a good property manager and let them do their job. That's what they have the expertise in. I would also strongly encourage you to do background checks on your property manager as well, and maybe even conduct reference checks just to know that they're going to be on top of their game. I would always strongly suggest that you actually understand the market and the dynamics of where you're buying. You might buy a property and find out that the main demand for rentals in the area are for students, and the property that you may have may not be suitable at all for students, nor may you want students to actually be residing in the property. Who knows? But look, like I said, it's important to understand the dynamics of the market, and I would refer to the Australian Bureau of Statistics census data to find out things about the median age of people within the area, their income as well, their occupations, their marital status as well. If they've got kids, for example, you might buy a one-bedroom studio and find out that the main demand for rental properties is actually for three-bedroom, low-set properties because of the influx of families within the area. So understand the market. The next aspect I would consider is choosing the right property type. And also the right mortgage that's going to be suitable for you. So again, that flexibility element. I would consider negative gearing. I would also look at the aspects of positive gearing as well. It's going to depend on what your financial strategy is. I'd also check the age and the condition of the property and the facilities that are around it. And look, I would try to make the property as attractive to renters as possible. And again, take a long-term view. So what are some of the aspects that could actually go wrong? First of all, you really need to remove the emotion out of this process. You're not buying a property to actually live there. You're buying it to make money. You're buying it as an investment. So you need to really remove the emotion. Land appreciates over time and houses depreciate over time. You also need to structure your loan properly. It's imperative. You need to get a good accountant and make it a financial success. How much do you pay for the property? Well, perhaps also consider getting a valuer or do the transaction through a buyer's agent. Overpaying for a property is going to be the death of an investor. It'll take you years of capital growth to move away from it, and it's a costly mistake that I've had to realize. I've made it, but I'll certainly be more cautious the next time I go down that route. What else could go wrong? I strongly suggest that you don't speculate. Have some patience within the process. Another aspect that could go wrong is if you don't actually do your homework properly. If you have poor cash flow management, if you do anything less than a thorough job, you need to have an appealing property for prospective tenants. If you wouldn't want to live there, it's pretty likely that others won't want to live there. And that will just mean that you'll have a vacant property sitting there that's actually costing you money as opposed to making you money. So really keep up the maintenance of the property and ensure that it's in a suitable, livable condition. Also, is the rent appropriately priced? Hanging out for an extra $10 or $20 a week might not necessarily be the best strategic plan because it could sit vacant for 4 more weeks than necessary, which actually means that you've lost hundreds of dollars in rent instead of actually making money. And you also need to choose whether or not you're going to manage the property yourself or you're going to manage the property through a property manager. I've always had my property managed through property managers. I believe in their expertise and the benefits that they can bring. The cost of using their expertise is also a tax deductible as well. It saves me a lot of time in the background because it can be pretty time consuming ensuring that that the rent is paid, that the property is in a well-maintained condition, that you're meeting the demands of your tenants as well. that you're doing the inspections on a regular basis. There's a lot that actually needs to be done. So I've got other things that I need to attend to, so I certainly see the value in using and utilising the expertise of a property manager. So they're the main tips that I would be giving consideration to if you were actively looking at purchasing an investment property first. So there are a stack of resources that property investors can actually utilise. One from a research perspective, and two to be, I guess, more investor savvy. I would certainly be using websites like the Australian Bureau of Statistics and looking at the census data. I would also be looking at SQM Research. I would also be looking at Your Property Investor, Suburb View, realestate.com.au, all those suburbs and websites that we checked out when we did our suburb research back when we were having an adventure and doing market research. I would strongly recommend utilising all of those sites as well. Other ones can be propertyupdate.com, yourinvestmentpropертymag.com.au. Look, I would certainly look into alternate investment strategies, even looking at meetup groups. There's hundreds of meetup groups that are happening within your local area where locals are willing to get together and share their expertise with other and talk shop about property. So that's another resource that could certainly be utilised in order to build your knowledge of how to effectively invest within property. Obviously, the Buyer's Guide is going to be a premium resource for which you can utilise. I would strongly suggest checking out the tools and templates section of the members section as well, and staying in tune with our blog articles as well to really get the most out of that. Look, there's hundreds of resources that are certainly available to you, and keep an eye out on the Buyer's Guide, because there's going to be a steady stream of constant information that will be coming through for your benefit. Subdivision. This is definitely another alternate strategy that you can utilise to capitalise on your investment that you've actually made. If you buy a house on a big block, you carve it up into 2 or 3 smaller blocks, you've got the potential to actually make some pretty serious cash out of this. Look, it does sound like a pretty simple strategy to utilise, but really that's far from the truth. Firstly, these details and these deals are incredibly competitive because the right block can be very lucrative, which would equate to also a premium price. But, let's keep things within a hypothetical context and look at a couple of scenarios from there. So let's just say, for example, you jag the ideal block, and it has all the characters that you want. What are the potential considerations? Well, firstly and most importantly, you need to be thinking about what the local council requirements and regulations will be around the actual approval of the potential subdivision. Now, there are many different rules and challenges, each with their own cost and ability to blow the budget as well. So to avoid wasting any time, effort and money, you really need to do the upfront research to ascertain whether the property actually has a chance of passing the local council requirements around town planning and lot size, as well as the zoning of the property as well. Now, all of these details can actually be found in the relevant local council website relating to the town planning scheme, or you can pay a town planner to complete some initial due diligence. Some town planners, if you punch in your details into their website, they will look to undertake some initial due diligence, and some will even do it free as a way of building their customer base. But, it'll only be very preliminary information, but potentially enough to give you a decent consideration whether it's a property that's worth doing some further feasibility on. So the next thing is that, you need to have a pretty big block. Most would suggest that you need a block of, probably 800 square metres or more. In Queensland, for example, or in Brisbane, in the Brisbane City Council region, A small lot subdivision is actually possible on 600 square metres of land. However, it has to meet a pretty long list of requirements and has to be within 200 metres of shops or other commercial activities around. So it is possible to do a smaller subdivision on a block, but like I said, you really need to do the research because each council will have different requirements under their planning scheme. Now, the next thing to do is you need to basically check if there's going to be enough room on the block for a driveway to coincide with the length and the width of the property. Now, depending on the local council, the driveway could be 2.5 to 3 metres wide, including landscaping. So, you need to take that into consideration. You need to also look at how the property will be positioned and how that will affect your neighbours and how close the property would be to the other houses as well. Now, I would strongly suggest to look for a level or a gentle sloping block. Flat land is much cheaper to subdivide on. This will also work in favour for your utility connections as well. It's certainly a lot more costly to connect utilities on a steep block compared to a flat one, that's for sure. Corner block properties as well could be advantageous as it will provide access to two separate streets. So you need to keep that in mind. The council may require you to pay for curb and guttering, which is, an expensive additional cost as well. You also need to look at the structural integrity of the existing property. Is it going to be a keeper or can it be repositioned on the block or is it just a knockdown? Each of these scenarios will have varying degrees of complexity and also costs that are going to be associated as well. Very importantly, you really need to understand the zoning rules. So it's important to check with a qualified town planner. You need to do pretty rigorous due diligence in order to make this work, particularly in the lead up to submitting your development assessment application to the council. In terms of ballpark figures, the subdivision cost alone could be anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000. That would include your professional fees from surveyors, town planners, engineers. It would also include the cost of connecting utilities to the property like water and sewerage and electricity. But there's a raft of other expenses that you need to consider even before you actually are able to start moving dirt and putting down a slab or moving another property onto the land. So it could be a pretty costly exercise and one where you definitely don't want the cost to blow the budget. Now, as you can see, there are definitely a lot of options to consider, and each of them all have varying degrees of complexity and risk that's going to be associated. So research and quality advice is absolutely key. Costs can really easily blow out in each of these scenarios, so you really need to be careful with what you're doing. And I'm by no means an expert on subdivision. I'm currently learning the tricks, doing my own subdivision myself. But there's mistakes that can be made. So where you can lean on someone for expertise and advice, I would certainly encourage you to do so. Don't go it alone. Buying a house doesn't have to be a one-person job. But, wow, it's a pretty big consideration because it means that if things go foul with your investment partners, the fallout of such can be pretty painful. Now, I'm probably being somewhat of a pessimist with this, but, I really be careful in terms of the arrangement that you enter in with individuals, particularly when it comes to property and all things money. Now, if you decide to team up with a good friend or your brother or your sister or perhaps that special someone within your life, make sure there are really clear expectations on income and what the actual long-term plans of the property will be. If you're entering into the arrangement with another, you really need to consider what would happen if the other individual lost their job perhaps and had to sit on the bench for some time. Or what happens if that special person in your life became enemy number one. So you need to really talk through each of those points with your potential investment partner and really ensure that there's some clear expectations before you actually enter into that arrangement. Now, if you team up with someone else, it is an option that you should definitely consider, particularly if it's done well. It's going to really allow you to leverage one another's strengths and get into that place sooner. It could also mean bankable dollars as well, because of it's allowed you to get into the property earlier and also pick up on the appreciation of capital growth. Now, if it's a friend or a family member, just ensure that they're house trained. That's all I suggest, and get some ground rules. Now, all this might sound pretty drastic, but it's important to cover these options off beforehand. And if it's decided over some beers or a bucket of wine, maybe you should sleep on it before you actually follow through on that. We all know that sometimes inebriated decisions aren't necessarily the best. So some practical tips, though, if you're going down this route. Look, I would strongly suggest to see a solicitor and get some paperwork drawn up. It's like a condom. It's just there for protection. You need to make a binding agreement on the arrangement that you're both entering into. Now, first home buyers grants as well. If you're purchasing with another individual, you'll only receive one payment. The grant is payable per property purchase, not per individual. Now, if your partner has owned property before, jointly or separately, and received the grant, that will actually disqualify you or make you ineligible to receive it, as the property will be held in the joint names. Now, if you are purchasing the property in joint names, you need to give consideration on how that ownership structure will look like, whether or not it's going to be owned under joint tenants or tenants in common. Now, these are basic legal terms that your solicitor should walk you through. So under a joint tenant scenario, each owner effectively owns a lot. So that means that on the basis, if the other person dies, the other individual will acquire the other half of the property. In a tenants in common scenario, each person will own their share outright. Therefore, if one of the investment partners should die, the property ownership can then be passed on to the next of kin or whoever is outlined in their will. Solicitors are going to be able to draw up the appropriate paperwork and provide advice on what the best options are going to be for you and your investment partner. Now, some other considerations is, if you do move and purchase a property by yourself, you could look at getting some lodgers in or some flatmates in. I think it could make sense for you that, if you've bought a big, new, bright, shiny house and 2 bedrooms are sitting there completely empty, you could well decide to rent one of the rooms out or bring both of the rooms out and bring in some lodgers. Under this scenario, though, the income will actually be taxed from the ATO unless you have a shared laundry facility or some other shared spaces. So I think it's important that you consult with a good tax agent for the appropriate advice around this. Now, if you do declare this as income, it could also have implications on your first home buyer's grant as well. And if you sell the property, you could also be slugged for some capital gains tax as well. Now, although a couple of rooms with lodgers and a few hundred extra bucks per week, it could really come in handy for this scenario. Ultimately, though, the choice is yours, and it just depends on the lifestyle that you're looking to create with the home that you've actually bought. You could have bought a property to move away from that house sharing scenario. If that's the case, maybe this isn't the best option for you. But, if you've bought a property and there's some rooms that are vacant, the money that could come in from renting out one of those bedrooms would certainly go a long way in helping to pay the bills and maintaining those mortgage repayments. Getting into your new home, what are some of the things that you need to consider? Well, Firstly, I think it's pretty important that you need to prepare your new crib. It's a modern world that we live in, so treat yourself and plug the power in and get going. Be organised and get the utilities organised so that the electricity, the gas, the internet, the cable telly, if you so wish, the water, the phone lines are all live and ready to go, so you can move in and enjoy those creature comforts. Also, don't forget to change your postal address as well. That's a pretty important one. So, a couple of tips around getting into your new property. With the power needs to actually be connected on a weekday, and it needs to be organised in advance. You should perhaps also consider going green with alternate energy. And remember, power accounts can actually be transferred as well. And if you don't pay your bills, also expect to sit in the dark. An annoying aspect, though, when you do connect the power or utilities for that matter, is dealing with the companies themselves. Generally they'll give you a window that a technician will be out between 8 and 2 p.m. or from 12 till 6 p.m. So unfortunately, it could require some sitting around by yourself at the home, or you could leave the key out. It really just depends, but that's something to consider. When it comes to connecting the gas, look, obviously gas is pretty essential, so check that it's switched on before moving. Prepare for it to possibly take up to 7 days to connect as well. Again, this is a weekday thing that it needs to be connected. Usually, most utility providers are able to connect the power and the gas at the same time. You also need to check the meter, and you need to be only paying for the gas and the electricity that you've actually used, not what the last person has actually used. When it comes to connecting the utilities, make sure that there's clear access. Maybe have a look at changing your energy plan. See if you can actually shop around and secure the cheapest option as well. If you need the internet connected or you need Foxtel or whatever that may be, you're obviously going to need to call in the professionals and help them help you to get it set up. Now, one of the easiest ways I've always found is to actually use a connection provider. It's quick, it's simple, it saves you doing the rushing around. It's normally free of charge as well, so they can organise all the connections for you on your behalf, and it's all systems go. So some moving tips. Look, I would try and get help from as many people as possible. Try roping in your friends and families and, get the help that you can handle for the day. And importantly, make sure you put on a barbecue and some beers maybe at the end of the day as a way of saying thank you. Another good moving tip is to declutter. Moving is a great time to throw out things that you haven't used for a long time. It always feels better when you're traveling a little lighter. It's even better to offload some of the items and get some cash for it, whether that be through Gumtree or eBay. I strongly suggest to get the internet connected, sort that plan out, and have it up and running beforehand. It's certainly going to save using up all your mobile phone data in the meantime as well. Boxes, cardboard boxes, wow, these things can get pretty expensive. Secondhand boxes are like gold as well, so maybe put up an advert on Gumtree. Let people know that you're looking for some. You never know. People actually might be giving them away for free. Otherwise, you could be paying like $6 to $8 a cardboard box. They're pretty expensive. Obviously, label your boxes clearly. Know which rooms they're most appropriate for, and it's just going to make the move on the day and the unpacking process all that easier. Packing, look, use your socks for glasses or other breakables. Wrap breakable items in clothing, or it'll save on some bubble wrap. Popping the bubbles though on the bubble wrap is a lot of fun though. Use Glad wrap on open toiletries as well to prevent spills. Look, stock up, fill up the shopping trolley. You've probably got plenty of new cupboards now to fill up, so it's good to have them well stocked. And when you first move in and really start nesting, chances are that you probably won't want to leave for a while. So it's a good opportunity to nest and enjoy the feel of your own home. Get insurance on the hire truck. For getting the height and tearing off the gutter of your new home when you're backing in will not only hurt the truck, not only will hurt the house and the gutter, but it's going to be a really costly exercise. So get insurance on the truck. It's worth it. If you are using removalists, ask about additional charges. What are hourly rates? What does that actually cover? Be sure to read all the terms and conditions. Do you have rights to the services that you've actually acquired? But, don't get caught up in all the different loopholes. If you're moving out of a place that you've rented, I've always used soap to fill up nail holes that I've made. I've always used a bond cleaner as well. I always have actually handed the keys back at the right time. And everyone else has 4 weeks rent tied up in the transaction. I want that money back. So, leave the property the way that you found it. Always keep detailed notes. Take pictures wherever you can and make a claim on the bond yourself. You've certainly got an entitlement to it. So don't wait for your property manager to get the process rolling. Actually initiate it yourself and lodge the paperwork to get your bond back. That's what I would certainly suggest. Look, it's only natural to want to spruce up your crib, particularly once you've moved in. You're almost definitely going to have a few ideas on, what you could change to basically ensure your new home is really looking its best. So, how much should you spend? What are the pros and cons of your decisions? What should you actually renovate? How much would it cost to, reinvigorate the bathroom perhaps? What council requirements would be required if you were doing a substantial extension or perhaps adding a new deck? Is it actually worth putting in a new kitchen, for example? How long would it take? What kind of trades would you need to organise? There's certainly a lot of things to keep into consideration, and when it comes to renovating and styling, your only really limits are your budget. And depending on the size of your house or your apartment, it's really going to make a big difference as well. So when you buy a house and you're trying to stamp your personality on it, it's going to be a challenge. And it's a challenge for anyone, but it's really rewarding as well. There's nothing like a bit of hard yakka and then standing back with a cold beer and a smile on your face and really admiring your own handiwork. It's a great feeling. Now, if you've bought an apartment, it's generally going to be subject to a number of special considerations. So these considerations will apply to noise, to fire, to privacy, to common areas as well. The body corporate will have a number of regulations, and the list is really going to go on. Now, normally body corporate is considered to own everything underneath the paint and the carpet. And you normally can have control over everything else. Now, anything that's considered common will basically be a no-go zone, and generally it's not worth challenging either because, sometimes just the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Wherever possible, though, check the guidelines, and if you're in doubt, make sure you check with the local council as well. Get the necessary approvals in place. It's definitely something that you will need, particularly if you start tackling anything that is structural to the property. Extensions will require planning approval as well. It's an absolute necessary. The big ticket items when it comes to renovations are your bathroom, kitchens, and obviously major extensions as well. Now, like I said, the options when it comes to renovating are really only going to be limited to your budget. So get quotes, only use qualified builders, and try and do what you can yourself. What could possibly go wrong? Providing an overview of the aspects for consideration will probably require a whole new set of presentations. But I think importantly, just go with your style, your own personal style, and go with your budget. Try not to overcapitalize wherever possible. Remember, it is your first home, so it doesn't necessarily need to be the last. But, if it is, knock yourself out. But really important, just don't overcapitalize on these kind of renovations. It's easy to do, and it doesn't necessarily gain a whole lot in terms of capital appreciation. Now, away from the big ticket items, a new paint job or carpet, flooring, or new cabinets, can be cost-effective ways of really making a big difference and making your place or giving a new lease of life to your home. However, you also have to think about the boring but absolutely necessary jobs, repairs, maintenances, and rectifications. A leaking roof can really have disastrous effects. Perhaps replacing an old hot water system is definitely going to be a better option than choosing a new big flat screen telly. It might not actually sound that way, but it'll be worth its weight in gold having a hot shower on a cold winter's morning. Now, when it comes to budgeting, I'm a very big believer that you should buy what is right for you. Don't buy what you're told to buy. Buy something that suits your own taste. Buy something that you're going to enjoy, and buy something that you feel will make your home more homely. That could be a big pool table in the rumpus room, or it could be something that's very contemporary and very chic. It really just depends on you and your own individual tastes. Now, speaking to interior designers, though, they have a couple of tips, a lot better tips than what I do as well. And, first and foremost, it's to style like a star. Buy something that speaks volumes. Have a feature piece in the room. And build the room around that one piece. That's the key, apparently. Give your furniture some breathing room as well, and prevent a cluttered look. Dark paint colors actually make a small room feel like a lot bigger. However, don't let it affect your lighting, because that's pretty important as well. You need to have an ambient light for mood and direct light for readings. So, good interior designers will actually layer the lighting. Pimp out the bedroom. I'm a big believer in getting a really good night's sleep. So have really nice sheets. Buy some luxury pillows. Have a nice bed. You'll love life all that much more after a good night's sleep. That's for certain. It's equally important, I think, to probably get a good couch as well. A good couch is a perfect place to drop the anchor on a lazy afternoon, and so make it a good investment. That and your TV or your surround system. Get Netflix and fill up the cupboard with popcorn, because it's a good way of saving money. It's a bit of an investment, but it keeps you at home and it keeps you entertained, and it keeps you up to date with what's happening on Game of Thrones as well. Also, try some secondhand shopping. Give a new lease on life onto some old furniture. Perhaps trade in some of your old belongings and get an upgrade to something that's more modern, or something that may be more appealing for you at this place of time. You could absolutely jag a bargain as well. And, speaking to interior designers that I know, it's about being bold. It's about using your creativity and having some individualism about it all. It's about being unique, and it's a really fun process as well. So, just appreciate that everyone has their own taste, but I'm sure once you step into your new home, it's some shopping will follow, and you'll be working on creating your house as a home. Now, I've outlined a number of websites there to check out for some styling ideas on a budget, but the best one is Pinterest. Check out Pinterest. There's some fantastic ideas that's available for styling on Pinterest, and also Instagram as well. Check out magazines, watch The Block, or watch other renovation type shows, and speak to family and friends. Some of your family members can have some fantastic ideas, particularly if they know your taste and your individual style. They could be really helpful as well, and great company when you're out shopping as well. So you've bought your home, you've acquired yourself a mortgage. Congratulations. So the next step is really to start paying off your mortgage and start building some equity in your property. Start working towards securing your financial future. And look, the sooner you actually pay off the mortgage, the sooner you're going to be financially free. So how can this be done? So here are some tips to pay off your mortgage a little bit quicker. First thing that I recommend is to have an offset facility. Now, an offset facility, as I've detailed on previous occasion, basically means having money sit in a transaction account, and that money will be offset against the balance of the loan, meaning that you essentially are going to pay less interest. I would also combine an offset account with a redraw facility, so it will allow you to access those additional repayments that you potentially have made. And having a redraw, it's like a savings account as well. At the moment, you'll get maybe 2 point something percent interest on a term deposit. It's not particularly high. Interest rates are probably currently double the rate that you would receive at a term deposit. So you're probably better off having any money sit in your mortgage account as opposed to your savings. But you still want the flexibility to access that cash as and when required. And again, it's going to reduce the amount of interest that you're actually paying, which in turn will mean that you're able to pay off your loan sooner. Now, if you're making monthly repayments, I would change that to fortnightly or weekly payments. This way, you'll make an additional 4 payments per year, and again, will allow you to pay off your home loan faster. Pay money into your loan on a very regular basis. How regular? You probably at least once a week, more if you can. And the reason I suggest this is that interest is actually calculated on a daily basis. Therefore, the more money that you can put in more often, the quicker you'll reduce the interest that's going to be payable. I would choose a transaction and a loan account that allows you to make unlimited transactions. I would also be looking at your loan structure probably every 3 to 5 years, just to ensure that you have a competitive market rate, that the loan is structured to your own life requirements as well. But it's important to watch the exit fees and have a loan that can work with you and changing circumstances that life may throw at you. The big thing to watch is exit fees and what the costs could be from an exit perspective and then an entry perspective in acquiring a new product and the establishment of that new product. Another way, if your home loan is over 30 years, I would change it to 25 years. Look, automatically you'll save 5 years off your home loan. That will mean that the repayments are going to be slightly higher, but it's well within most people's means. Where possible, try and make some lump sum repayments. If you get a tax return or if you get an inheritance or I don't know, maybe your multi-bet payout comes off and you win $1,000. It might be pretty rare that actually happens, but if you do have a windfall, just put it straight into the mortgage, and round up the payment to the nearest $100. Say your repayments are $1,745 a month. Round it up to $1,800. Every bit actually counts. Things to watch out for are early payout fees, and if you're on a fixed rate home loan, you may not be able to make additional repayments. I would pay close attention to your product disclosure forms, and I would also be looking at reviewing the mortgage probably every 5 years, every 3 to 5 years, just to ensure that the product you have is working for you and not against you, and that it's competitive and suitable for your life circumstances. I myself, I'm an accredited mortgage broker and have expertise around loan structuring from a principal place of residence as well as more complex structuring for multiple investments. So I strongly suggest that if you haven't looked at taking up your one-on-one strategy sessions to really get you buyer ready, that you do look to doing so and letting me work with you to devise a plan on when it's going to be the right time for you to buy. So let's move on. Let's perhaps have a look at what some of the other ongoing commitments are going to be. Managing your ongoing commitments. Managing your own commitments raises a few interesting points, and one of which is what actually happens if you really have some difficulty making your mortgage repayments. Perhaps the hot water system dies. Perhaps the car claps out. Maybe your boss gives you the flick and you find out that you've got a new bubba coming along the way. Wow, talk about feeling stressed. Maybe interest rates are also on the rise and other bills are going to continue to come in. Now, this all might sound pretty drastic, and hopefully it won't happen, or at least hopefully it won't all happen at the same time. But trust me, there are going to be times that you find yourself on struggle street. Um, and the hot tip here is really not to run, duck, or hide, but to, address this as quickly as possible. In fact, the moment that you actually realize that things are getting out of control, you need to really reach out to your providers of these finance facilities and see what arrangements can actually be made. So I would strongly suggest to firstly to call the credit providers, let them know of your current situation, and basically have a discussion on what options are available for you. Now, when assessing your options, credit providers could be in a position to help. They could potentially arrange a financial variation, perhaps, to the contract, um, and to maybe make sure or see if there's an alternate repayment plan that could perhaps be utilised where you can still afford to make those payments. The most important thing is to really try and keep those payments up no matter what, or else things will just start to get harder. Um, this is also the time to reassess your budget and really perhaps cut it back to the bones. Find a financial counsellor, determine if there's anything that you could sell or refinance or consolidate. If you're really overcommitted, maybe you'll have to sell something to recoup your losses. It's a really unfortunate outcome, definitely, but it certainly remains the better option than your house being repossessed by the bank. Now, another important thing is that, don't feel that you should borrow more money to get out of trouble. It's only really going to be a short-term fix, and it'll come back to bite you. Um, it's a really ugly position to find yourself in, and it's incredibly stressful. It's emotionally draining as well, and it's just plain icky. Such a scenario really hits home about the importance of not overcommitting to begin with. Also allow for some contingencies and overestimate on your costs at the start of the journey. And that way it's going to allow you to build some fat and overestimate your costs, all of your costs, just so you've got some assurance that you're going to be comfortable and maintain your property and your other personal possessions and maintain a lifestyle without it feeling like it's a burden on your life. And that's a situation that you don't want. When you're looking at a loan, your bank will look at serviceability. They will look at capitalising on your loan and seeing putting an asset test on whether or not you would be able to afford the loan if interest rates were 2 to 3% higher. And I would certainly suggest that you do your own calculations by adding some additional fat on the interest rate and also some fat on your costs as well, just to make sure that you truly can afford what you're entering into. And best of all, if you do find yourself that things are getting hard to manage, ask for help. There's help out there, you just need to utilise it. If you do find yourself that you are struggling or potentially in some financial hardship, there is help available. I've included some web links there for you to check out. There's a number of government-sponsored programs. Charities are very welcoming and do offer assistance for you as well. But like I said, it's best to be on the front foot and ask for help. Like we outlined in very early in the piece of the SMART program, people actually genuinely like to help. So reach out if you do find yourself in a situation that perhaps you are struggling, and reorganize the budget, look at things of how you can get back on top and manage your financial situation more appropriately. Most importantly, though, wow, buying a home is a new chapter in your life. It's a really exciting time. It's a place that you can call home. It's a place that, you've acquired. It's, you've started to defend your own financial future. And a lot of a lot about buying your home is really about mindset. Yes, it can be a big debt to take on. That can be quite crippling, or it could be incredibly motivating. It really just depends on your mindset. But ultimately, it's your life, and you're doing something that is beneficial for you, and you've created it. So good for you. I really encourage everyone to try and maximize their potential. Everyone has the opportunity to own their home in Australia. We are very fortunate that we have a great way of life. Yes, it may be expensive, but there's a certain, there's avenues to enter the market like we've discussed over this program. Um, and, when are you going to invest? When are you going to invest in your financial future? Um, you really need to take that into consideration. Yes, mistakes could be made, but you know that's only dependent on how much research and homework you've done into this exercise and chosen something that's right for you. The buyer's guide has been established to help you every step along the way. We have a pretty extensive network and are more than happy to utilize that network for the benefits of our clients. And ultimately, we leave our clients feeling that buying their home was the best decision that they've ever made. So I really hope that you've enjoyed and taken a lot away from the SMART program. There's a stack of videos to continue to watch. It's a library that is just going to keep on growing and growing. There's a lot of tools and templates, and again, that resource will continue to grow as well. And I look forward to meeting each and every one of you and working with you to realize your home ownership dreams and secure your financial future. So I strongly encourage everyone to book their strategy session, meet with me individually or one of my team members so we can work with you and help you realize that home ownership dream. Best of luck. Look forward to meeting you. Bye.